The fossil record has a strange sense of humour. Most of the time, when it preserves a death, it preserves something dramatic, a hunt, a battle, a catastrophe. But every so often, it captures something else entirely. Something so specific, so oddly intimate, so genuinely weird, that when paleontologists uncover it, their first reaction isn't awe. It's a kind of baffled delight. Because they're looking at a creature frozen in the middle of doing something that no fossil has any right to have caught. An animal that choked on its dinner. A snake that ate a lizard that had just eaten a beetle. A pair of turtles that died in the middle of mating. Hundreds of frogs that drowned during an orgy. These aren't the noble, cinematic deaths of the prehistoric world. These are the embarrassing ones. The unlucky ones, the deeply strange ones. And they are, in their own way, some of the most wonderful fossils ever found. Because they don't just show us an animal, they show us a moment in all its awkward, unfortunate specificity. So today, forget the epic battles. Let me show you the weirdest, most bizarre deaths the Earth has ever preserved. And to see the strangest of them, you have to understand a very particular kind of place, because most of these fossils come from a specific type of location that paleontologists call a death trap. And the most famous one in the world is a place in Germany called the Messel Pit. Around 48 million years ago, in the warm tropical Eocene, Messel was a deep volcanic lake, and it had a lethal secret. Its deep waters were poisonous, starved of oxygen, and, the leading theory goes, prone to belching up sudden, invisible, suffocating clouds of carbon dioxide from below. So the surface of the lake looked inviting. Animals came to drink, to swim, to hunt. And then, without warning, they died, poisoned, suffocated, and sank into those still, anoxic depths where nothing could rot them and no scavenger could reach them. The result is one of the most spectacular fossil sites on Earth, where creatures are preserved so perfectly you can see the outlines of their fur, the iridescent colour still shimmering on beetle shells, and, crucially for our purposes, the contents of their stomachs. Messel didn't just kill animals, it caught them mid-life and froze them exactly as they were. Which brings us to what might be the single most bizarre fossil ever found. Scientists have nicknamed it the nesting doll, because inside the Messel Pit they found a fossilized snake, a young one, a member of an ancient boa-like group. Nothing too unusual about a fossil snake, except this snake had died with a full stomach. And when researchers scanned it with a high-resolution CT scanner, they saw what was inside it, a lizard. The snake had swallowed a lizard whole not long before it died. Already that's a remarkable find, a predator and its last meal preserved together. But it didn't stop there, because when they looked inside the lizard, they found something else. In the lizard's own abdomen was an insect, a beetle. The lizard had eaten a beetle, and then, before it could digest it, the lizard was eaten by the snake, and then, before the snake could digest the lizard, the snake died and sank into the lake. So what they had recovered was a food chain. 3 animals, 3 levels, beetle inside lizard inside snake, all fossilized together in a single stone, a perfect frozen snapshot of who ate whom, 48 million years ago. This is so extraordinarily rare that, at the time it was described, only one other example of a 3-level food chain like it had ever been found anywhere on Earth, in a 280 million year old shark. It's a chain of bad luck and worse timing preserved for the ages. That snake had the single worst timed death imaginable. It died at the exact moment it was at the top of a 3-link food chain, and the Earth kept the receipt. And Messel wasn't done with strange meals. This is a place that has given us fossilized bat stomachs, still containing fragments of the moths they'd been eating. Ancient horses preserved with the leaves and even grapes still in their guts. It's a site that captures not just death, but appetite. The very last thing each animal ever consumed, held in place for tens of millions of years. But choking on your dinner, unlucky as it is at least a dignified way to enter the fossil record compared to what comes next. Because the death traps didn't just catch animals eating, they caught them doing something far more private. Also from the Messel Pit come some of the strangest fossils in the entire record. Turtles that died while mating. Over the years, from that single lake, paleontologists have recovered 9 pairs of these turtles, of a species called Aleochelis, preserved together, male and female. And this isn't a case of 2 turtles just happening to be near each other. The researchers were able to sex them. The males are smaller, with longer tails, and in at least 2 of the pairs, the tails are positioned in the unmistakable arrangement of active mating. These turtles were, quite literally, coupled together at the moment of death. It is the earliest direct evidence of mating ever found in the vertebrate fossil record. And the way they died tells us something haunting about that poisonous lake. The interpretation is this. The turtles began mating in the clean, safe surface water because they'd never have started in toxic water. But turtles, like many animals, can enter a kind of trance while mating, oblivious to the world around them. And as they mated, still locked together, they slowly sank, drifting down out of the safe surface layer and into the poisoned depths below, absorbing the toxins through their skin until it was too late. They never noticed they were dying until they already had. And so they came to rest on the lakebed, together, and stayed that way for 47 million years. It's strange, and it's a little bit sad. And it's the kind of impossibly specific moment that only a place like Messel could ever preserve. But if you want the single most bizarre mass death in the fossil record, the one that sounds like a joke until you realize it's real, you have to go to another German site, a place called Geiseltal. Because there, in rocks around 45 million years old, paleontologists found something baffling. Hundreds upon hundreds of fossilized frogs. A staggering concentration of them, all dead, all in the same place. For a long time, the assumption was drought, that a swamp had dried up and stranded them, or that the water had lost its oxygen. But a more recent study looked closely at the frogs and proposed a different and much stranger cause of death. Because these particular frogs were mostly land dwellers, they only returned to the water for one reason: to mate. And they did it the way many frogs still do today, in an explosive, chaotic, once-a-year mass breeding event. And here's the grim mechanism. In these frenzied breeding congregations, many males will pile onto a single female all at once, forming what biologists call a mating ball. And in the crush of that competition, the female, held underwater by the weight of all those males clinging to her, can simply drown. It happens in living frog species today, and the researchers concluded that this is what killed the frogs of Geiseltal over and over across the years. They didn't die from drought or predators or disaster. They drowned during sex in enormous numbers, in a mating frenzy so intense it was fatal. The swamp fossilized the evidence. Hundreds of frogs preserved mid-tragedy, victims of nothing more than an overwhelming urge to reproduce. There's something almost philosophical in that, if you sit with it. These animals were killed by the very drive that exists to keep their species alive. The imperative to make the next generation was, for these individuals, the thing that ended them. Nature, being efficient, doesn't much care about the individual. It only cares that the eggs get laid. And if a few hundred frogs drown in the process, well, that's a price nature is perfectly willing to pay. So what ties all of these together? The nesting doll snake, the mating turtles, the drowned frogs. I think it's this. We tend to imagine the fossil record as a grand museum of the dramatic, the giant predators, the epic extinctions, the clash of titans. And it is that. But it's also something much more human, much more relatable, much stranger. Because these bizarre fossils remind us the prehistoric animals weren't just characters in an epic. They were living things, with all the same undignified vulnerabilities that living things have always had. They got hungry and overreached. They got distracted and sank. They were driven by instincts stronger than their own sense of self-preservation. They had bad luck and worse timing. And I find that oddly comforting. Because a fossil of two dinosaurs locked in mortal combat tells you these were fearsome monsters. But a fossil of two turtles who died mid-mating, or a snake with the worst timed last meal in history, tells you something more intimate. That these were creatures as fragile and foolish and driven and unlucky as anything alive today. The deep past wasn't only grand and terrible. Sometimes it was awkward. Sometimes it was absurd. Sometimes an animal just did the most ordinary, everyday thing. Ate a meal, went for a swim, tried to mate. And the earth, for reasons of pure chance, decided to remember that one small, strange moment forever. 50 million years from now, I wonder which of our moments the earth will choose to keep. Let's hope, for our sake, it picks a flattering one. Thanks for watching, and until next time, keep looking up.